welcome to Just One More Cookie, a podcast about two sisters' journeys toward complete health and wellness. We definitely don't have it all figured out, and we're still in the thick of it, but we are enjoying the ride. We'd love for you to come and join us for just one more cookie. Hi, friends, and welcome to another episode of Just One More Cookie. I'm your host, Abby Kochek.
And I'm Amy.
And today we are going to talk about, on our road to health and wellness, plateaus.
Dun dun.
Oh, that dreaded word.
It's the worst word. Mostly because there's so many triggered emotions behind it.
Yes, it's a weight loss curse word for sure.
Oh, yeah. I wanted to talk about how this topic even came about. One of the things that me and Abigail are adamant about is that we want to make sure that we're doing topics that are hitting like reality, and we want to be honest with where we're at. So yesterday I called Abigail. I call Abigail every Saturday because Saturday's my weigh-in day. It's like my restart day. So I like to check in and share stories with Abigail at 7:30 in the morning, her time. Bless you for answering.
No, thank you.
But when I called her and we started talking, she kind of started sharing her emotions on her journey. And I will say how it came across, but you tell me how you were feeling. She sounded very frustrated and annoyed based on the progress or lack thereof of her journey.
That's pretty accurate. I was very irritated and annoyed because this time around, and I've hit several plateaus several times during my past 14 years of trying to be healthy. And this one has only been 2 months. So this has not been as long as some of my plateaus, but I'm just irritated. I am irritated that I'm not seeing any progress. And every time I get on the scale, I want to punch somebody. But really, there's nobody to punch because it's not really anybody's fault. But it's injustice. And I feel like injustice is just the worst thing in the world.
It's like sometimes, and I say this all the time, I feel like I have such a complicated relationship with the scale. Mm-hmm. It's like a toxic relationship, right? It's like you keep going back to it every week, knowing that some weeks is going to be good to you and sweet. And then
it's like an abusive boyfriend.
Yeah, then some weekends is going to emotionally beat you up, right? Like you're going to get on it and it's going to literally tear your soul out and make you hate yourself and feel like you're not a good person. And then the next week when you get on and it's like nice to you, it's like the apology, like giving you flowers. Like I didn't really mean it. Last week when you gained 7 pounds for no reason whatsoever, I didn't mean that. And all of the turmoil and the anguish you went through, here's some flowers. You can lose 3 pounds. Now I'm still going to keep these 3 pounds because I'm a soul sucker. But it's like, it becomes like this, it almost becomes like an abusive relationship, especially when you've set up your journey to only be a slave to the scale and you only bank your progress and your health to the scale, which I think can be really toxic when that is the be all end all. Like it is a measurement tool. It's merely a tool among many tools that you can use. But when that becomes your only tool, it can be the most mind-altering, exhausting experience and just really derail you.
I agree. Amen to that.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's so frustrating because you need the scale. Like we talked about a couple weeks ago, if you don't have that accountability and looking that number in the face, it's easy to get derailed and say, I'm going to cheat today and not care because who cares, what's going on with the scale. I'm not going to look at it, pretend like it doesn't exist. So you need it. But at the same time, like you said, it can be so deflating, especially when you think, I had a really good week,
Yeah, I did all the right things.
Yeah.
I said no to Cheetos. And then when you get on the scale and you gain, you just think, I should have ate the whole bag of
Yes.
Cheetos. Like,
Right.
forget counting the 12 Cheetos. Give me the bag because clearly this sacrifice means nothing. Yeah.
Right.
I wonder,
Yeah.
like, for me, and I know our experiences with plateaus, our experiences are similar yet different, especially in the way that we responded. But I know for me, when I first started, because I was 331 pounds, like the weight came off automatic,
Mhm.
which a lot of people experience. I mean, when you go to from nothing to doing something, you're going to see some form of result unless you're just cheating whatever plan you're doing. So when I was starting, it was so easy for weight to come off. So like the first 50 pounds came off in 5 months. And at that speed, I was like, oh my gosh, this is perfect. In a year, I'll be at goal. And then it's like from 50 to 75 took me like 2 years. From 75 to 100 took me another 2 years. And then once I hit that 100, my body was like, every year for the rest of your life will only give you a pound. So you better live until you're 120. That's what my body said to me. I was like, forget it. We're done. We want the rest of this weight. So when that plateau hit, I mean, the first thing is like experiencing going from being successful to feeling like a failure was very difficult. And then navigating through that plateau and a number of plateaus. Like if
Mhm.
I've been doing this for 17 years, there's been more than one plateau that's lasted longer than months. Some of my plateaus have lasted for a year or more, you know? And a lot of that had to do with my own ignorance for how to really respond to plateau, which we'll talk about. But I know yours is similar, the way that
Mhm.
you responded, the numbers that you have, but a little different.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think just when we were talking yesterday about plateaus, I know when I have gotten to my lowest, which I have set this as my goal, when I had gotten to my lowest a couple of times, um, I think it was an unrealistic goal for my body. I don't know, maybe just for my body habitus or just because I have been so overweight my entire life since I was a kid. It's unreasonable for me to think that I'm ever going to be a size 2, which that was never my goal. But when I got to my lowest, it was like you said, like my body would not do anything else. So I reached that plateau, and we'll talk about the behaviors that got me back up to where I thought I would never go. And now I am probably, I think I'm about 20 pounds away from that lowest goal that I hit probably 4 years ago, maybe. And so to me, when I got down, I mean, and it was slow moving when I got down the last time to my lowest weight, but still it was pretty steady. And I thought, okay, it's going to be steady this time. And it just seems ridiculous that I still have 20 pounds left. And why am I sitting here for 2 months losing nothing and doing everything right?
Yeah.
So annoying.
Yeah. I feel like when it comes to the concept of plateaus, I mean, one of the first things that you have to embrace is that it's probably going to be a reality of your journey. Like
Mm-hmm.
at some point, you are more than likely going to hit a plateau. So understanding that that's completely normal and that is something that just kind of comes along with the territory. And when you own that, when it comes, that doesn't mean like you'll be like, oh, I'm fine because I know it's happening. That's not
Mm-hmm.
how it's going to work. But at least it doesn't like hit you as a surprise. Like just know that along the journey, you're going to have to make pivots. And really, I think plateaus sometimes come from our bodies as a way to help us pivot, whether that be physically or mentally. Sometimes your plateau is based on a mental shift and maybe it doesn't have to do with physical. It's your body challenging you and expect that it's going to be frustrating. Expect that it's going to be overwhelming. Expect that you are going to want to throw tantrums and all the things that you're not going to be skipping through lilies through the plateau, but at the same time there's a possibility to you're able to endure it and you're able to get on the other side of it, because I know both of us have had testaments of that there is life on
Mm-hmm.
the other side of a plateau. But if you allow the nature of a plateau to mess with your mind, there are a list of things in the negative that can happen if you aren't aware of them and don't have a strategy for them. And I know we've selected 5, but there's so many more than the 5, but these are just 5 that we've kind of pulled out that are things that could essentially, when a plateau comes and you're not prepared for it, here's some things that can happen. So obviously the biggest one is you quit, right? And this is so easy. Because how many times, now let me just talk for me and then I'll let you tell me. There's been so many times where I get on that scale, that abusive, just jerk. And I get on the scale and it's like I look at it and I just think, like you said, what's the point? Like, why am I doing this? And it's not even get on the scale. It's like showing up to workouts all the time, like getting up every morning and walking, or coming home on Saturday and meal prepping with, you know, broccoli and sweet potatoes and fish. Like, it's all the behaviors. And I'm thinking through all the behaviors and thinking like my clothes are still fitting the same and I should be here and I'm not. And the scale is telling me I'm a failure. My body's telling me I'm a failure. This is pointless. And then I go sit down at my meeting and we're all talking about, you know, we're celebrating people losing weight. And then I just sit there with an attitude. Like, and you know, like when you have an attitude, it's like, even if people are saying positive, good things, you're like, just shut it. You know, like,
yeah, who cares?
I remember one time I had a particularly difficult weigh in and I was just like, I was tired. And I remember this lady in the meeting was tired. We were celebrating, right? She had a victory. And her victory was, she said, this week, I really wanted a Snickers bar, but I got celery instead. And I was like,
oh, boo.
I was like, no, here's the worst. She's like, I was like, oh my gosh, celery is actually so much better than a Snickers bar, right?
Liar.
And everyone in the meeting, is like, yeah, celebrate. And I wanted to be like, you're a liar.
Oh, I ought to raise my hand. Like,
never in the history of humanity would anyone be like, oh yeah, celery is so delicious. The Snickers bar is disgusting. The reality is that like I chose celery over a Snickers bar because the results of a celery I like better than the results of a Snickers bar. But you will never hear me lie out of my mouth and say that it's better. Celery is bamboo. We could literally build huts with celery. We're not even sure it's edible. We just eat it. And I'm like, it's like I started getting an attitude at that point and just getting in such a negative space. And the mentality of this is not worth it. If I'm not seeing the results, it's not worth it. And there's been so many times that I've walked out of meetings or walked out of the gym and just said, I'm done. I'm going home and I'm getting a pizza. What's your experience been?
So I agree. The thinking this is not worth it. I feel like now, since I'm so far into it, I don't have that danger of I'm going to quit, because obviously I've been doing this for so long, but especially in the beginning. In fact, there was at least one time where I did quit and I thought, this is not working. I'm just not going to care. You know, what is the point? I'm doing all this work. Forget it. But I do think you do a lot of weighing the pros and cons. And if you're in that mindset where I've hit this plateau, I'm doing all of this work and I'm not getting what I want, what is the point? And then it's very easy. If you do allow that mindset to take over, it's so easy to quit, which it cannot, as we talked about our very first episode, I believe, when we talked about quitting, it's just not an option. You have to realize this is a marathon, that there's a starting line, there's no finish line. So I just think that, oh man, getting that mindset that it is worth it, even though it doesn't seem like it, but it is very easy to quit. So that's something you definitely have to look out for. One other thing that I want to talk about too is when you are in the midst of a plateau, it's really easy to form very bad habits and develop a bunch of manic behaviors. So I know that, well, my experience with manic behaviors, which I know that we talked about, which I'll let you speak to in a little bit, talked about your manic behaviors have sometimes been not, I wouldn't say positive, but almost like, how can I fix this? So I'm
Mm.
going to do, oh man, I remember when you'd call me and say I'm on these juice fasts. I had this, I remember one time you came home for Christmas and brought home that stupid juicer, and then you'd put all this fruit in it and had this plastic grocery bag, and it would just spit out refuse of fruit
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
vegetables. You take this glass, look at, this is what I'm going to eat. This is my lunch. I'm like, this is disgusting. So you tend to, and I know you have some negative ones too, but like, okay, I'm going to fix the problem and then get in your head about that. Whereas I tend to allow manic behaviors to manifest in a negative way, to where I get really frustrated and I feel like we just said, what's the point? So then I'm just going to go crazy. I'm going to order some pizza from the place across the street from my house that has amazing deep dish pizza.
Mhm.
And then I'm going to go to Panera and get some baked goods.
Mhm.
And then I'm just not going to care, because what is the point? And
Yeah.
so I think it's very easy to it's fall into that emotional eating or anger eating, to where, and a lot of that too with emotional eating, it's not necessarily always sad eating or happy eating. Sometimes it's, I'm angry
Yeah.
eating. I feel indignant. I'm just going to eat because I'm mad,
Yeah.
because the scale just slapped me across the face. So
Yeah.
what about, tell me about yours? Because again, your manic behaviors manifest differently than mine.
Yeah, and for me, I didn't recognize them as manic behaviors because I just thought it was problem solving. Because I'm like, okay, so because the in my mind, the normal of let me like cut back on what I'm eating and exercise more, because that wasn't producing the way I thought it was, which I've learned a lot of my issue is just inconsistency in general. But around that time I didn't realize that. But because that wasn't working, I'm like, okay, well, I need to be more extreme. That's the problem. I'm not extreme enough. And I'm the type, like, if I'm having a problem, I go into research mode. So I'm like on YouTube, I'm figuring out what's everybody else doing, what's happening in the health world. So then it was like the juice fast. So I went on the juice fast. And then it was the raw food diet. So I went on the raw food diet. And then it was like manic exercise. Like insane. Like I spend 75% of my day exercising, to the point where I'm injuring myself. Like, you remember I went through that
Yes.
time. I went through that time period where, like, every time I'm calling home, like, literally I used to run on this trail when I lived in Tennessee, and it was in the woods, right? It was, I don't know why I did this, but anyways, because I'm already just like kind of a klutzy person in general, but it's this wooded area and it has all these like massive mountain hills, right? So I'm like going and I'd be running, and if you go all the way around it, it's a mile. So I would like run it like 2 or 3 times. Now, so I was really into running. And every time I went there, I would almost trip. And everybody would say, you need to stop doing it, stop running. But in my mind, I'm like, I can't, because if I don't run today, then I won't lose weight, and then I'm going to get big, and then I'm going to go back. Like, literally, that's how if I missed a workout, if I ate too much, it was like I would get manic, and I was injuring myself. Like the one time I broke my hand on the trail and called you,
I remember
my eyes out.
You were bawling. I broke my hand.
And I'm in the shower because I needed to go to the ER. And I'm like holding this hand and trying to wash with one hand, and I couldn't move. It was ridiculous. But because I had gotten so manic, it was 2010. I remember it like yesterday. Actually, Mom was visiting when it happened, and it was like my first time when I binged and I purged. And that was the start of this like freak control of like feeling like I got to get this weight off. And then like going so manic, but then feeling so overwhelmed that then I go in the other end of like binging and purging. So I feel like when it comes to a plateau, if you're not aware that you are in this very vulnerable, being in a plateau is one of the most vulnerable states on your journey. If you're not aware that you're currently at a plateau and you're a little bit more vulnerable, you might not even realize the habits that you're taking on that are actually really detrimental. Because while I was doing it, I thought, I'm not manic. I'm just in it to win it. Like, look at all these other losers, not losers, but these slackers over here. Like, I'm in it, but really
Mhm.
it was a manic behavior manifesting itself. And I think too, it's not even just what happens to us in like physical, it is what happens internally. I know
Absolutely.
that there can be so much in dealing with depression or feeling like a failure or like just self doubt, defeatism. I know that just from the emotional side, and I internalize a lot of my emotions. So, but still, like just going through that, it was mentally exhausting.
Mhm. Oh yeah. I speaking to depression, I think a lot too. My personality type is can be very prone to depression. I struggle with a lot of perfectionism. I've gotten so much better with that in just working on myself, and part of it is getting older and letting things go, but I really can very easily fall into that place where I can become really depressed. And then I think then I start shifting my focus to where all I can think about is my weight, and I'm failing because I'm stuck. And I, like you said, I'm going to gain all this weight back. Then I'm going to be super uncomfortable. No one's ever going to love me, which is such a stupid association. But everybody in their heads, I think, especially women, you just
Yeah.
think it's natural to link it together that no one's going to love you if you're big. But
Yeah. And it's a helpless feeling. It's
it is,
so helpless because it's like, what else am I supposed to do? Like if I
yeah.
feel like I'm doing all the right things and it's still not working, then where will this put me beyond this moment?
Hmm.
And I think one of the things that has to shift is making sure that you're not putting too much focus on the numbers and you forget to find ways to celebrate other things. Because
Hmm.
that's really like plateaus begin when the numbers slow.
Yeah.
But just because the numbers slow doesn't necessarily mean that you're not making progress.
Yeah, I think that the numbers, it's the easiest way to track your progress. I think that's probably why we focus on that so strongly. I know that I especially do. And it's harder to measure those other goals. Like my clothes are fitting differently, or, I got a compliment. Somebody noticed that I have lost weight, or I look in the mirror and my face seems to look slimmer. Those are kind of, they're hit and miss, and you don't always notice them. Or sometimes your weight loss has to be drastic before you do notice them, but it's very easy to focus on the numbers. And I know, especially in this past 2 months, I can get on the scale and it will ruin my day. I will do it in the morning, and I thought I should never even got on that scale because now I am just mad at the world. Oh, forget it. But I think it's really important to find those things that you can hold on to that have nothing to do with the scale.
Yeah, because there's so many. Like if you think
Hmm.
about the person you are today as opposed to the person that you were when you started this journey and how many things that you overcame that are beyond just the weight that you lost. Like all the things that you've accomplished physically that your body has been able to do, like the the clothing size that you went down or the confidence level that you've built in yourself. I think when you're in a plateau, while this should be something you do through your entire journey, is just get the scale should not be number one. It can be
Hmm.
on the list, but it needs to be lower on the list because when it becomes the only focus, you are going to resent the entire journey instead of enjoying the journey because the enjoyment of the journey is like becoming more of you. It's learning so much about yourself and your strengths and like even from the like a physical standpoint, I've just enjoyed watching my body get stronger and um watching the way that I view food and like overcoming an eating disorder every day of my life. Like that's not easy, but it's like when I'm in a plateau and I find myself just shifting straight to the numbers, like you said, I become a slave to something I can't control. And
Mm-hmm.
that just scientifically, especially from a female's perspective, with all the hormones we carry and the cortisol levels, like it's not kind to us. It's not kind to men, but it is brutal to women,
Yes, it is.
because that thing will tell you, you'll get on it one day. Oh, I'm down 3 pounds. This feels great. And then 2 days later, on the day that you're weighing in, it'll say, oh no, sorry, I meant you're up 7 pounds. Because today you're ovulating. And for some reason, that means you need about 7 pounds worth of ground beef on you. It's like, it's just, it becomes too, it's almost like making you schizophrenic, like you're the happy
Mm-hmm.
person and then you're like the mad person. And it's like, I can't, for this inanimate object, I'm going to let that inanimate object control my life and my day. I just can't do it.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, it's really rough. And I think that has to be, if you are going to deal with a plateau, which we all are, that's one of the main things I think that we have to all get into our heads. And it's going to have to be mental practice, because you naturally are not going to say, oh, who cares? The scale doesn't matter. I'm fine. It just says plus 0.5. It's okay.
Yeah.
That's another thing that really annoys me. When I'm on a plateau, it's like I gained 0.5. Oh, that's not bad. And I just want to tell that person, shut up. I think I've told you that a couple of times.
I'm sure I told you that.
Right.
But it's like when they take out the here's a pound of fat and here's a pound of muscle. So which one, doesn't that make you feel better? And I look at it and I think, no, because that pound of fat, there's a lot of that in me. Like, that brings a lot to light. Like, okay, that muscle looks really good. But it's a mindset thing, right?
Yes.
Which is the fifth thing that can happen in a plateau, which is you are at a higher stress level. It's almost like you can't see past this moment. It's like the plateau becomes so big that you just create a little tent there right by the plateau, and every day you just stare at it and you hate it, and nobody can come in and encourage you. It's almost like sometimes me and Abigail will be on calls, and it just depends on our attitude. If I'm not in the mood to be uplifted, don't uplift me. And Abigail will be that too. Like, if she's frustrated, it doesn't matter if I say, Abigail, I was searching this quote book and I just have a really great quote to share. She would be like, I don't want you to share it with me.
Yeah, keep it to yourself.
And it's okay to be like that sometimes, but if you live there, it becomes a mindset, like you just said. Like, you're in a plateau failure mindset, and it's the idea of, I'm never going to get past this. Nothing's ever going to work. I'm going to be here for forever. And then it's almost like that Henry Ford quote, like, if you think you can and you think you can't, both are true. It depends on how you think, right? So if I create my tent on the other side of my plateau, and every time I just saying to myself, this is it, nothing will ever work, well, then make yourself a home. Then that's when you become cynical. Then that's when you go in the other direction and make excuses for yourself and say, well, it didn't work, so I'm quitting. Well, that's on you. That's not on the plateau. That's on you, because you chose. And maybe we do it unwillingly. Sometimes we choose because it can be frustrating. So sometimes that can, it can be higher stress level, and definitely a failure mindset.
Oh yeah. And I think too, in that instance, when you are feeling like a failure, because that's what we do, we feel like a failure. It's almost like we have to shift that mindset, kind of like you said, and realize we're not a failure. We are a success story. Because then, maybe I am quote unquote failing right now, but I mean, I'm down 62 pounds. That's a huge victory. Yeah. Woo! That's a really big victory. And I think that we need to focus and be more positive, which is so easy to say. Think positive. It's easy to say, it's not so easy to do. But you need to, in this case, you do feel like a failure. And sometimes I think it's important to kind of get perspective and shift our focus and think, Yeah, I'm not a failure. I've made some really big decisions in my life that have affected me for the good and they've made me better.
Yeah.
So I think that's one of the things that, will help us get over
Yeah.
that failure mindset.
Yeah. That's a good transition to talk about solutions. And solutions is such a heavy word. So and maybe the idea isn't solutions, but coping, like coping mechanisms that you can use during a time of a plateau to help you weather that time period that can be so difficult. The I was looking at an Instagram profile, and somebody was screenshotting some text from this book called Atomic Habits. And I checked it out a little bit. You should definitely check it out. But there's so much good stuff about habits. But one of the things that he mentioned was called the plateau of latent potential. That's what he called it. The plateau
Hmm.
of latent potential. So I was so intrigued by just the term that I had to look it up. So, in essence, he was talking about how a lot of times we focus on our goal so much and we don't focus on the system that essentially sets us up for success. We're just focused on the goal and we don't focus on the system. But when we focus on the system, we have to realize that the system is almost like depositing into a bank account, right? So it's like every time I stick with this system, I am putting deposits into this account. I might not have access to the account right now. It's like a savings account, right? So imagine it like a savings account and it's something I can't touch. And every time I decide I'm going to work out, I'm going to eat right, I'm going to get more sleep, I'm going to do yoga to lower my stress levels, I'm going to walk outside in the sunshine, whatever kind of health thing that you're doing, it is going into a bank account. So even if you feel as though you are on a plateau, if you continue to focus on the system, it's not a plateau. It's just you depositing into your savings account and you are going to eventually reap it. It might not be today, it might not be tomorrow, it might not even be next year. But the good thing about it is that if you are depositing it into an account, most accounts come with compound interest, which I thought was
Really good.
yeah,
I
which I
like
thought was
that.
a phenomenal analogy because not only am I every time I'm making these decisions, I'm not just making this decision for Amy right now. I'm making this decision for Amy in 10, 15, 20 years. So
Mhm.
that when I'm 80 years old, I'm not in a nursing home, overweight, and my body's broken down because I chose not to take care of it. And this podcast, I want to say, is not just for overweight people, it's for people who just want to be healthy. So it's like I'm making these decisions not because I want to lose 5 pounds this week. I'm making this decision because overall, my goal is I want to be healthy for the rest of my life. So
Mhm.
I'm going to keep doing the things that I know to do. If I have to pivot, I'm going to pivot, but I'm always going to be putting currency into my health account, whatever that looks like. I might have to change my workouts. I might have to change this, to break the plateau or not. I'm going to keep doing the right things and believe that it's coming back to me and it's coming back with compound interest if I stay consistent.
That's really good. I really like that.
I know. I have to get the book. We must
Yeah.
get the book.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
So another thing that's going to help us, I think,
Hmm.
to get through a plateau, sometimes you just need to be honest. Sometimes you need to throw a temper tantrum or a pity party,
Hmm.
but then you need to get over it. I think that a lot of times, like we said a little bit ago, we can't always be positive. Everything is great.
Right.
Plateaus are beautiful. I'm just learning so much about myself.
Yeah.
That's not realistic. So sometimes you do have to have a pity party for yourself. So sometimes when your sister calls you and tells you, "Oh, don't worry, you just gained zero point 0.5. That's not bad." Or you'll lose zero point 0.5 and she'll say, "Oh, that's great." And then you'll say, "It's not because last week I gained 2 pounds. So losing zero point 0.5 is stupid." So
Uh-huh.
sometimes you need to have an attitude. You need to acknowledge your emotions. You need to deal with the reality of the situation, that this is a terrible situation. I am furious right now, but then I need to get back up. I need to suck it up. It is what it is. It's a reality. I'm just going to have to keep going.
Yeah. I feel like the false positivity movement is just as toxic as negativity,
Mm-hmm.
because when you believe that life should only be positive, it's going to cause you to act outside of integrity, because we're not always positive all the time. It's just
Right.
not possible. Like, there are some times when it's okay to be sad and it's okay to be angry and cry and get frustrated. I just feel like you're not being honest with yourself if you're not being honest with your true emotions. So find somebody that's a safe space for you, that just allows you to be you. And sometimes that you can be a brat. Like, sometimes when Abigail calls me and she's having her moment, I'm like, stop being a baby. Um,
So rude.
I'm just kidding. I don't think stop being a baby, but it's like, pain is relative, right? To the person who's
Mm-hmm.
experiencing it. So if I say I'm hungry and somebody says, well, people in third world countries are hungry, that is so true. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm not minimizing their hunger,
Yeah.
but I'm still hungry. The fact that they're hungry doesn't make me not hungry. I'm
Right.
still hungry. So the fact that you're going through a difficult time and other people might be going through an even more difficult time, okay. But you still need to acknowledge that you're struggling. So
Right.
there is value in really being honest with your journey and with how you feel. And sometimes, I know for me, when I feel like I'm hitting a plateau or I feel like I'm just getting overwhelmed, sometimes I just take a day of rest. Like today, I had a workout schedule that I was supposed to do, and I text my trainer that sends me workouts, and I was like, I won't be doing it today. I can't. I need a break. I'll be doing yoga at my house, and I'm not even going on a walk today. Just because I feel like I need to pull back. I feel like I need a break. I feel like I've been getting overwhelmed with the process, that my focus has been getting off, that I've been getting too focused on the numbers. Let me bring it back down to reflect and recenter myself, because the moment that the journey gets unbearable and stops being enjoyable and stops being fun, I have to stop and reassess. Otherwise, I'm going to go back to those behaviors we just talked about. I'm going to shift to being manic again. That's when I'm most vulnerable to go back to binging and purging, is when I get to that point. So it's almost like not just being aware of your emotions, but being aware of the way you feel on your journey. So if you feel yourself shifting and that same, like, I hate this and I'm upset and feeling like you can't move forward, maybe that means to just take a step back, take a breather, and just remind yourself that you're on the right path. Like we talked about, you're putting that compound interest in, and you might just need to take a break. And another thing that you can at least check on is sometimes your plateau might have something to do with a health issue. And if that's the case, there is value in seeing a doctor if you feel like you're doing all the right things and your body is not responding. Now, me and Abigail have had very different experiences with this, and I'll let you tell your story, because you've done more. Well, you have health insurance, so you've gone on this journey a little bit further than me. I don't have health insurance, so you've had a little bit more experience with this.
Yeah, well, my experience was very frustrating for sure. And I don't want to tell this story to try to discourage anybody from seeking medical help and medical advice. Everybody is different, and the source of people's health issues are all different. So some of them you do need to see a doctor for, but I just was getting super frustrated. Weight loss, in the beginning was not easy, but came off easier. And just this time around, it's been very difficult for me, even doing everything right. I've lost a lot of my hair. And then I found out that I have nodules on my thyroid. So then I thought, well, maybe this is it. Maybe there's something that's not functioning properly. And so I went to the doctor and I told them, I had this health screening. They did this free heart screening. They did carotid ultrasound, and then they saw some nodules and said, you need to follow up with your doctor. So I go in and they were like, well, that's not really a problem, but we'll do an ultrasound. And so sure enough, I had nodules, but they're not cancerous. They did my labs, and because my labs were okay, because these nodules were non-cancerous, they couldn't treat it medically. So there wasn't a pill that they could throw at me. It was pretty much, we can't help you. And I I became super frustrated because I know in my heart and in my mind something is not right. I mean, I'm 38. I should not have, my hair should not be super thin to where I have to go through all of these theatrics to try to just get it to look presentable. It's exhausting.
Yeah.
But just it in the well, I wouldn't say I allowed it to derail me, but I got to a point where it really depressed me because I thought, they're telling me there's nothing we can do. And then I felt kind of vulnerable because I felt like I was going in and saying, listen, something's wrong. And it was almost like they were telling me nothing's wrong with you. And I'm not just going to give you a pill just so you can get skinny. That's the attitude that I found. And
Yeah.
again, I'm not trying to discourage anybody. This was just my experience. And of course, every doctor is different and every doctor's approach is going to be different. So maybe if I had gone to somebody else, my story would have been different. And I went to two different people. It just, again, because I couldn't get treated by a pill and because there wasn't anything glaringly wrong, we can't treat you medically, you're done. So, but I do think you are going to find sometimes if you are hitting a plateau and you're still, you're feeling sluggish or, there's certain things that are triggering you, and trust your body.
Yeah.
You know who you are, you know how you're made up. If something is wrong, you should seek help for sure.
Yeah, and that's the biggest thing. Like this is on both ends. So the one end is if you do go to the doctor and they find something that is, that's essentially wrong, then that becomes a great addition to the journey that you're on. So if you figure out that you have, hypothyroidism, like that's something that you can get treated to help you break through a plateau. So sometimes when you go to the doctor, you receive valuable information about yourself that you might not have discovered. But then there's other times like with Abigail, and then in my situation, the times I did go to the doctor, they were like, nothing we can do.
Mm-hmm.
And in my mind, same thing with you that you said, Ab, it's like, no, something's not right.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's something that both me and you struggle with. One of the major things when we both started losing weight, we started losing our hair. And from a woman's perspective, like that's devastating. And a helpless feeling. And when you go to all the doctors, they're like, you're fine. Like, just go live. And you're like, no, I'm not fine. I'm not. So for us, for both me and you, like, one, we've had to have some pretty amazing resolve because we've both just said, okay, well, but we're not going to quit. Like,
right.
We're not going to stop. So.
Sorry, I don't understand.
Oh, Google thought I was talking to him. Sorry, Google. Google didn't understand. Neither did we, Google.
No, we didn't.
But I think this is really important. This is something that I've learned for myself. Whatever the doctor couldn't do for me, like I wanted to be able to do for myself. So I've just become such a private investigator of my own body and just done as much as I can to pay attention to my habits, my patterns, to read, to research, like even when it comes to like my hair, like researching natural remedies, what can I put in my diet? How do I care for my hair? So sometimes it can be frustrating, but the beauty is that the final say is always you. You are the final say. So if the doctor says, well, there's nothing we can do, okay, well, but it's my body. So I have a say in it. So my final say is I'm still going to be healthy. I'm still going to go on this journey. And thus has been for both of us. And even for you, Ab, before you went to the doctor to like move through a plateau, like after the doctor gave you that bad news, you pushed through and have since lost 20 pounds.
Yeah,
And like,
almost 30, 25
yeah,
probably. Yeah.
yeah. And that was a time when you were really struggling, like you couldn't lose weight. And I think a lot of that too, plateaus come when we're at emotional, like emotional roller coaster. And at the time, that was
Mhm.
around the time our dad died, and Abigail had to deal with so much because she was the executor of the estate. So then, you have to take into account so much that's going on in your life. So become a scientist of your body. Like
Mhm.
Google, YouTube, like we have a library of things for us. So even if the doctor doesn't have a pill, and maybe that's a good thing.
Mhm.
Maybe them giving you a pill would have made you worse off. Maybe receiving their treatment would have hindered you. So now it's like your health is still in your own hands. So you can still do something, even if you don't, no information can still be good information.
Mhm. I think you bring up a really good point, which will kind of segue us nicely into our next point, that when you find out whatever it is that you find out when you are being a private investigator, it is important to make a change because sometimes your body gets to the point where it doesn't respond the same way that it used to. So for me, this past time when I decided after I'd seen the doctor and I did have a pity party for myself for a little bit and felt very despondent and what am I going to do now? Had a cry and then I was like, well, here we go again. Just keep going. What am I going to do? Quit? This has been 14 years. This is my life now.
Yeah.
So I started doing this time around, I started doing intermittent fasting. So now I'm only eating between 12 and 6. And I've noticed a decrease in my hunger. I feel like, there's all those, research about how it regulates your blood sugar, whatever. So, I mean, it was just something new that I tried for me. And I'm not recommending any kind of diet or any health plan or anything to anybody because everybody's different. But I thought, okay, I'm going to try it. And I used to always think I will never be able to skip breakfast because ever since I started losing weight 14 years ago, that was hammered into me. You have to start your day off. That's how you fuel your body. You start the fire burning, you start your metabolism burning. You have to have breakfast. And I thought I will never be able to do it. And then I got to the point again, I'm at this plateau. I'm so frustrated, furious. Thought, well, I'll just give it a try. And it has really worked for me and I really enjoyed it. And I felt like that along with, placing some accountability in my life, that really helped my journey. It helped kind of jumpstart me. So, maybe you need to remove something from your diet. Maybe there's like a weekly treat or something, and maybe it's too much. So maybe you need to substitute it for something else. Or it might be time to try a different workout. So maybe all you do is walk, which is great. But instead, maybe try to do a walk run to where you're doing 30-second sprint, 1 minute walking, anything. You try doing a high intensity workout, interval training, something like that. Anything that you can do to make a tiny change to kind of jumpstart your body or wake it up or say, you know what, I know you're used to doing this every day, but we're going to try something different and see how your body responds. That might be something that'll kickstart you a little bit.
Yeah, because I think sometimes with plateaus, I think it comes from staying in a routine and not realizing that your body is always evolving.
Mm-hmm.
So the things that worked for your body last month or last year might not work this year. And that can make it fun. I know for like because the brain is so like the minute we try to change, our brain is like, "Oh my goodness, change is coming. Let's protect you." Because the brain is always trying to keep you in a state of safety. So it feels like change is danger. So it's like sometimes we respond to change in that same way, like, oh my goodness, if I change, and what's going to happen? I've been so used to doing it like this. But I think that's where sometimes the gift of plateaus come in because they force you to try new things. And like you were saying, Ab, it's like you can make small changes that make a huge difference in your life. Like I know for me, and I think too, like the intermittent fasting is a really great point. It doesn't work for everyone. Some
Mm-hmm.
people do keto, it works. Some people just count their macros, it works. Find what works for you and what you know will work long term that you can have fun with and that your body responds well to. Find that and do it. But like the point is, if you do something every single day to improve and you just improve 1%, by the end of the year, you're 365% improved. That's
Mhm.
it's a huge jump. But I think when you are doing research and being open to making pivots when a pivot is necessary and realizing that that change is the exciting part of the journey, it makes it fun, then it's like it'll make it more of an adventure. Because I know for me, like even researching, I like community gyms. I like doing things with people, and that kind of led me to doing CrossFit. And I have found this amazing community, and it helped break me through a plateau that I was having because I was like, I think I need a little bit more intense workouts, and I think I need someone to help me with that. And it introduced me to this like big community of wonderful people. And the same thing with like joining Weight Watchers, that worked for me. But it wasn't just going to Weight Watchers and like having a system. It introduced me to a community of like incredibly supportive friends. So sometimes plateaus come to shake up your life in more ways than just changing behaviors. Sometimes it comes to bring a new mindset that completely shifts your life. Sometimes it brings people into your life or new knowledge or new information that can literally transform your life. So sometimes when you see plateaus as an opportunity, it can make you view it differently, that this isn't coming to like destroy me. This is, like I said at the beginning, this is my body's alert that it's time for a pivot, and pivots usually mean that there's something exciting, because the other option is quitting.
Mm.
And on that side,
Can't do it.
no, that has to be, out of all of the coping mechanisms and the solutions that we have, that has to be the one that's most important, is
Mhm.
that you resolve never to quit. Because if you quit, it's not just quitting a program, it's not just quitting a lifestyle, it is quitting on you. You're quitting on you. You're telling yourself you're not worth the effort. And that's not fair to you, because you are worth the effort. You are worth the time. You are worth the energy. You might just need a break, but you never want to quit on yourself. So, like we said, have a pity party, have a day, throw a tantrum. And after that tantrum is done, you look yourself in the mirror and you say, it might suck. I might be frustrated, but I'm not giving up.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that I heard this one time on actually another podcast, and they were talking about how we so often treat our future selves like garbage. We set them up for failure. And I've said this, although not in my weight loss journey, but I'll say it at work sometimes. When I'll be dealing with stuff and I'll get overwhelmed, I'm like, that's for future Abigail to deal with. That chump will have to deal with that tomorrow. And I think that we don't look to the future and look to that person that is going to have to deal with the consequences of the choices that I make today. So I need to learn to love future Abigail and say, she's going to have a really hard time dealing with this. If I indulge or I say, you know what, I'm going to throw up my hands and just not care, and I'm going to give up just for today. And then tomorrow, Abigail's going to wake up and think, why did I do that? Be super depressed and say, I was just set up for failure. I think we have to look ahead to the future and not just be all about right now, and not be all about the situation that we just see in front of us right at this second. We need to look ahead and maybe weigh the consequences of what does happen if I quit. You know, this is a really rough place that I'm at emotionally. Physically, I just feel exhausted. I want to quit. But what's my tomorrow going to look like? What is my 10 years down the road going to look like if I do say, you know, this is too hard right now. I just can't handle it. So yeah, that is a huge thing, and it's a great thing to end on. We can't ever give up. We cannot ever say, I'm done, I throw up my hands. We got to keep going.
Yeah. And I think this, when I think about this one, I think about probably the last 2 years of Abigail's life, and just kind of watching her go through what she went through. Because I remember the major plateau really started, like I said earlier, right after my dad died. And it was like watching Abigail go through And if you've ever lost a parent, you understand the weight of that grief. So watching her go through that grief, but at the same time, trying to work through her health, but then not finding solutions. Like I saw her do the right things. She's doing all the things and trying to hold it together, not even just with her weight loss, but also handling my dad's estate. But at the same time, Abigail's a manager at a health clinic. So she's managing people. So it's like watching her juggle all those things and then watching her try to go to the doctor and figure it out. And like in my mind, I just thought, I don't want her to buckle under the weight of it. But I think one thing that has inspired me is that even in moments where it got hard and it got difficult, and even when the doctor was like, you're on your own, Abigail never stopped fighting, and she still hasn't. She's a fighter.
Mhm.
That's why she's my favorite. But
Oh.
I think a lot of times it's like you have to get people in your corner and on your team that have that same mindset. Because if Abigail's mindset in that moment was, well, I'm just going to give up, she's still going to be my sister. But from the health journey standpoint, if she gives up, then she can't be in my corner because I have to have people in my corner that are going to be with me and say, I'm with you in this until the end. And like, so Abigail couldn't have given up because I wouldn't have let her, because Abigail won't let me give up. You know what I mean? Like, we're going to get discouraged and we're going to be mad. And there's going to be sometimes she's going to call me. I'm going to have an attitude and say, get off this phone. I don't want to be inspired. I think one time we were having a health call and me and my other friends who were on the phone had both gained and Abigail had lost. So Abigail always ends with a motivational quote. So the motivational quote was like, I don't remember the exact one, but
I remember it.
Okay,
I remember it.
Say
It was something along the lines of, I can get on the scale and see the numbers as a measurement of how much my body weighs and not my self-worth, which I thought was a pretty good quote.
It was a great quote, but the timing was awful.
Yeah.
So she reads it.
You were all jerks too
Me and
about
my
it.
other friend were like, no, it's another quote. It's not this week. It's not the week. But it's like you can have those moments, but I know when I get off the phone, I'm going to meal prep for the next day. I'm going to put my gym clothes out and I'm getting up the next day and I'm continuing. And the same thing for all of you that are listening, like get people in your corner that have the resolve that they will never quit. They won't let you quit. They'll weather the plateau with you, and know that if you're in a plateau right now, you're not alone. You are not by yourself. There is hope on the other side of it. There are strategies that you can implement to help you through it. But most importantly, there is a support system. And if you don't have it, find a support system. Reach out to people because you don't want to navigate it through alone. So, did you have any final wisdom that you would like to share? You championed you.
No, I think I've given out all of my nuggets of wisdom today.
You said all that you need to say.
Yes.
So thank you all once again for listening to us and for being a part of this community. And especially when it comes to plateaus, we know that this is such a touchy subject and can be so emotionally driven. But we know you can do it because we did it and we're doing it every single day and we're not going to quit. So don't quit. Keep going. And just when you reach for that one more cookie, maybe you might have it or maybe you don't. Either way, join us next week for another episode of Just One More Cookie.